the overriding trend that I see is more people are doing more outside of their company or for themselves, whether it's solopreneurship or side hustles or whatever. Help them tap into community to generate demand, but more importantly, build trust with the community to generate demand.
Yeah.
And that's a big dot deal. Fill up their pipeline and all of that. So
Super. Thank you so much, Jared, for taking out the time to do this conversation with us. And I'm sure a lot of RevOps and GTM strategists and leaders and also community builders from across the world are going to be excited to hear this conversation with us. So thank you so much for taking out the time today.
thank you for having me.
Jared, I think this is people who have been watching this series and have been reading about this for almost like past 2 months, 2.5 months. They know that the first question I always ask my guest is, what do they do outside of work? So, who is Jared outside of work? What is something that you spend your time on? And what are you doing when you're not working on RevGenius or the other multiple projects that you do?
Jared outside of work is, when you're a founder, unfortunately, work never shuts off. I have a girlfriend. I have a dog named Stevie Nicks. I go to the gym. I watch movies, horror and thriller. A24 is my favorite production house. And I try to hang out with family as much as possible.
Oh, that's great to hear. Now tell us about RevGenius. I think it's been 3.5 years since like you've founded this and you've been working on this, and there are more than 40,000 GTM leaders in RevGenius right now. In fact, I just joined a few hours before and I'm yet exploring the Slack community, but would love to hear from you. How did the inception of this happen, and where are you at currently with this?
Yeah, the inception happened because I empathized with the sales persona in particular. Somebody that was an AE and an early stage leader. I dealt with quite a bit of turmoil and difficulties, right? So like I was successful in my 30s. I'm sorry, my 20s. In my 30s, I got like laid off or fired like 3 times, I believe. Some more my fault than others, but that's just the way it goes. And I became pretty disenfranchised. And during COVID, I found myself without a job as well. And I decided to network with as many people as possible, be active on LinkedIn. And this DM group I had of just like 2 people became 4, became 25, and became like a really important thing for the community. And I remember I was using it to try to get a job. That's what people do. And people didn't believe me that I wanted to work somewhere else because it was getting so big so fast. And I remember a 2 recruiters, my favorite recruiter, said, I don't think you should be interviewing anymore. You should do this full time. So I did. And the rest is history.
Wow. And how did you decide that community can, become like the way, why did you choose community as the medium for building, something like this? Why not, maybe just like a newsletter or a podcast or something else?
Yeah, I am building a newsletter now, but and you are building a podcast. Why community? Because I found a big gap, and I think people shouldn't start communities unless there is a big gap, an obvious challenge that the people need solving or need an attempt to solve, right? And the gap I found was there was no place for everybody. Not just sales marketing, RevOps, but also individual contributors and senior leaders that weren't charging, that felt like a real community. And I'm watching this COVID times happening and myself becoming disenfranchised with things. And I'm like, other people probably are too. And you can't get that virtual hug even, or that warm feeling as much from a newsletter, although I'm going to try, that you can from community and people supporting people. And it's just who I am.
Yeah.
One common thread throughout my life, certainly in my professional life, and the second half of my professional life when I was in tech especially, was loving to connect with others. And I used communities outside of work to build relationships with other people. And some of them intertwined with work, but it was always like kind of like a social type thing, right? And I had an aha, why can't you do this all the time and like make that your work? So it was kind of like something very congruent with who I am as an individual. And I saw a big challenge in the space 3-4 years ago. It wasn't as inclusive of a space as it is today. And I hope to have been a small part of the movement that got it to being a little better.
Yeah. I think that definitely makes sense. And I actually, would want to jump to the second section of my set of questions, which is more about how have you been observing that B2B SaaS companies or SaaS companies in general are using community as one of their channels of GTM? Do you have any examples of few companies who are doing it really well, few companies who have failed at it or have had some learnings out of it? I think certain examples would really help us understand the entire philosophy of community as a GTM channel would really be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different examples. So you have like Outreach acquiring Sales Hacker. Sales Hacker was like the top content site in the space, and they had they later built a bit of a community as part of it, and community was kind of, even though they didn't explicitly say, it was always part of it, right? Because they had in-person meetups and they had stuff like that. When they acquired them, they created a movement. What happened soon after? The sales engagement category came about, and you had a whole movement of people evangelizing it, and them and Sales Loft together created this whole new space on outbound emailing and cadence. And don't get me wrong, they were doing it before Sales Hacker, but there was definitely like a little extra oomph at that point that created this movement. So that's cool. Example one. Example two, positive. I love what Dan's been doing in the space. Dan Samija, from Chili Piper to now Apollo. What I love about what he does, especially, is that he doesn't necessarily rely on a place that community lives. You'll hear a lot that are you in a Slack group or a Discord group, and those are places that people live digitally. They aren't necessarily communities. They're tools communities use, but they're not communities fully. Community is the people, right? And people could go anywhere. And he in particular, uses this phrase I love saying, like community transcends platform, like to a T. He's on social with his evangelists, with his ambassadors, his advisors, his community advisors, essentially groups of people in his community, whether they're his customer community, whether they're his ambassador community or community ambassadors or advisors, etc. And he does such a wonderful job of rallying the people around Apollo now and building that movement. And he focuses on social heavy, but he's a community person, and he came from Modern Sales Pros, which is a traditional community in the space. So I love those two examples. Lavender is great with community. They kind of do that as well, from creating movements around things. Like they'll throw events, but they'll create just like a lot of buzz throughout. I also love the beginnings of the community that Beehive is going to create. They've created this movement. They're a newsletter platform. And on Twitter, the movement's starting on its own, and they're just liking all the posts and facilitating and letting it happen. So those are a few people. I know some I went into a little more detail than others that I like. Things I don't want to call out any people in particular that I don't like, but some of the activities that folks might do with community, like the wrong way, or at least what I perceive to be the wrong way, is using it and violating trust of the members, and trying to sell them things is the easiest, most obvious way to do that. And when I say try to sell them things, don't like try to sell them things above and beyond and before trying to help them do the thing that they need to do.
Yeah.
And you've seen that people burn through burn through email lists and other things to do that. That's a quick way to end a community.
Yeah. And how about, let's say, if a SaaS company wants to start a community, what would be like a 2-step or a 3-step? Like, what are the first 3 steps before they even like go into action or into the execution mode? What is, let's say, the pre-decision making phase of execution?
Why is a community needed? And the answer isn't for you, right? Oh, a community is needed to make more money. Duh. Yeah, of course. But why do the people need a community, right? Yeah. They don't need to buy your product yet. They need to have some major challenges solved. So understand like what's out there, probably that your product could help solve, but that doesn't involve your product, right? So you have like sales engagement, that category as an example. You have and people rallying around it, right? Easier ways to do outbound. You have people rallying around originally Salesforce and no more software. Remember how clunky it was? Software back in the day? A lot of people don't remember that, but you had all these people saying how. So one, understand what it is. And it doesn't necessarily mean create a category per se, but like it means have a point of view and but have a challenge that you're solving. 2, like, what's the simplest way to get this started? Like, you don't need a Slack to start a community. So think about like, I say minimum viable community. It's kind of a crappy phrase because community is like all encompassing, and you should just do a little like, but like what's the least amount like to get started? And do you need a place for people in the beginning? Do you need a place that doesn't exist?
Yeah.
And the answer might be yes. The answer might be no. The answer more often than not is no, believe it or not. You need people to congregate, sure, but they could do it on the platforms they're already on social, right? They could do it on Zoom.
Yeah, this actually reminds me of a question I was just like a conversation me and Kyle from Morning Dew we were doing on a similar recording. We were discussing who should the head of community report to. Should it be the CEO or the head of marketing or head of product or head of revenue? What's your opinion on this? Do you think community sits under marketing or which function, or is it varies between different SaaS companies or in general?
So it varies. I mean, perfect world, I think it would be under growth probably, because growth looks at all the gates. Now, not everyone has growth.
Yeah.
Marketing is an obvious one, and customer success is another one. So like, when you think of community, think more broadly than just like, again, a place. Like what's a community? There's probably a little bit of nearbound in it, like partnerships. There's probably some evangelism. There's probably your creators. There's probably your, that are running newsletters. There's probably some content. And It's a tricky question. Marketing and customer success are both obvious. Growth is as well. It all depends on your goals and what you need community to do.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of starting with the customers you already have and then going to the new ones, but like and creating growth loops around that. Like Notion, one of my favorite communities, and many people's like North Star.
Yeah.
Was a marketing person that launched that, and it's tons of growth loops and all this. I'm like, growth. Yeah. So it's. I hope that helps answer.
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to understand. You have been into sales, RevOps, GTM, and now as a founder and running a community of 40,000 GTM leaders. Did any of your earlier stints as a sales rep and then in the RevOps and other work experiences, did it help you as a community builder and a founder? What was something that you learned from sales that has
nothing from work helped me become a better community leader. Everything I did out of work did. I launched a magazine. I had lines around the corner through the biggest parties in town in New York City, right? I was a member of like Soho House and other communities and loved connecting with creatives and stuff away from work. I used community to get away from work, not to come in. Like I wasn't the person that went to the work happy hours all the time. And those would be awkward, man. Like when I worked for FedEx, they weren't really like that community driven. Like people were scared of people that they worked with, scared in like bureaucratic type ways and nervous. So where I found the most community, and sometimes it was in my customers and prospects, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't often within my own company, even though like I felt like there was camaraderie sometimes and stuff, but there was also like, what have you done for me lately? Like, are you hitting your numbers? Like things are going to be a lot better. If you're not, like, do you really want to show up? Are they going to like it felt very like you being in good graces was based on how good you were doing. And I looked at community to be a neutral spot from that and away from the company and even away from the space. Yeah. So that's where my inspiration and stuff came from. And throughout, I've gotten I ran a fashion magazine. I've won fashion festival, top fashion film festivals. I've had a life away from SaaS. And I think that's helped me bring a new perspective and a different connectedness to folks as a result.
So, just out of curiosity, how is your schedule right now? Because now community is the work for you as like the founder of RevGenius. So how are you psychologically and emotionally handling it, and how is also like your schedule? Like, are you enjoying it like work or you're still doing it something?
So my schedule now is like a lot of sales stuff, so I'm not as close to the community as much as maybe I'd like, and that's when you run a community as a business, that's just a necessary cycle. So like it's a lot. And when you want to give value, people take a lot of it and ask a lot of it, and you want to like keep up with that. That part is hard. It's great to give, but at a certain point you need to protect your time.
Okay. My last question, actually, because I know we are also running short of time.
Sure.
And this is something that I wanted to know from you as well, because you have really closely observed a lot of other communities and are also seeing trends where other GTM leaders or marketing leaders are probably trying their hands at community. What are, let's say, the top 3 trends or few trends that we're going to observe in the community industry and domain in the next few years? Maybe maybe just the next year or the next 2 years,
So,
but
so some trends I see, and I'm hoping to start some of them, is um, trends in community are trends in the people in community, right? Like let's be real. So when like creators and influencers is a massive trend.
yeah,
And these people are in your community. They're buying your product, or they used to, or in some way, shape, or form, they're in there. So like ignoring them is not it. Fractionals, massive trend. It's only going to grow. These are people that work fractional time. They split their time with multiple clients. There's more flexibility to hire them, and there's more flexibility for them to work with multiple folks to meet or surpass their former senior leadership level incomes.
yeah,
That's big. Involve them, like they're part of the community, and they're probably going to be the ones recommending your products and implementing them, perhaps, right? Like all of that. And I want to say nearbound is a new word. Partnerships has been around. The importance of it has been massive, but people are starting to see that that's big. But the third trend is, evangelism, and like folks, it's just the overriding trend that I see is more people are doing more outside of their company or for themselves, whether it's solopreneurship or side hustles or whatever.
yeah,
And it's because they're given or they're earning more opportunities to make more money. And it's kind of a cool thing. And running a community, you need to understand that these people are part of your ecosystem. Like, one, to help rally others to come in, but two, like, people are looking up to these folks to become them, right? Like the AE today wants to be the creator tomorrow, or the side hustler tomorrow, or make more money. So understanding that is puts you ahead of the curve.
yeah, yeah. I think those are some great insights, and I also love how you said that you're hoping to create some of these trends, and I hope you do that. But
So what I want to do is I want to call them all collaborators and not call them influencers, creators, and fractionals. Collaborators, because they're collaborating with brands, and they could do it in many ways, right? And they could also be interchangeable often. It's just a different word in B2B, because I think you have a creator that could also sell, that could also drop a course, that could do that, and you have that more in B2B. I think I might eat my words on this than B2C, at least at first glance. And seeing somebody as valuable to your community in potentially multiple ways is something really cool and really new, and use them to collaborate with your brand. And the next trend on that is the idea of I don't know if rebranding is the right word, but like the idea that communities are replaceable. There's 11,000 MarTech companies. If any percent of them has a community, like above one, that's crazy. Like, why are they going to be there? Like, why are they going to stay there? It's understanding that to retain a community member, you need to collaborate with them on their goals too. Right? What explicit or implicit? Is it helping them get a promotion? Is it helping them get a new gig? Is it helping them with the side hustle, helping them make more money, new money, blah, blah, blah. Status, learning, sure, but learning with a purpose, not just learning to learn, not what you think learning is, like what they agree it is, that it needs to be. And you helping them grow will help you grow. And that is collaborative growth. Yeah. And that's more on the nose than, because if you ask 10 people what community means, you might have 10 different answers. If you talk to 10 SaaS companies, they might say, oh, it's influencer marketing, or oh, it's it's social media, or it's newsletters? And the answer is it's all of that. But like communities are like LGBTQ community, like religion community, like firefighters community, like old school communities aren't transactional, is what I'm trying to say. So when you take the word community and you put it in a transactional environment, it becomes like, I get the sentiment behind it, but it becomes harder to define and understand, right? Because where it was a belonging thing before, people have dozens of places to belong now in B2B. They don't like how are you helping them? Does that make sense? So like the idea is collaborative growth comes in, and it just makes things a little more objective and a little more clear and executable.
Yeah, even in fact, like personally as well, I've been part of so many communities, but rarely, very few of them like really add any positive value to me. Otherwise, sometimes it's just noise. So I think being invested into the members' growth and helping them, whatever, like you mentioned, side hustle or adding an extra income, that shared goal and shared outcome is like really, really important. And Jared, I would have loved to continue this conversation for an hour or even more. But I know
I have a few minutes if you want to keep going.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know if you do.
I actually have one burning question, and that's about more specific about RevGenius as to how do you have any success stories over there as to what have people really enjoyed as members? Like when you meet any member, what do they really say about RevGenius? Like what do they enjoy about this community?
How's your experience been so far? Did you add it to your profile? Did anybody speak with you, or?
I've been going through all the introductions and just seeing who's there from India, who are the people in, let's say, similar industry or the HR tech space that I'm currently like working in. And that was like my initial exploration. I've not had one-on-one chats with anybody yet, but I'm hoping to in the next few days. But I think.
Did you introduce yourself in there?
Yes, I did.
Sweet. Yeah. So when people add it to their LinkedIn and they do some stuff, there's often like a bunch of positivity that comes to them, like introductions and things to that effect. Some thinly veiled sales pitches, don't get me wrong, and let me know if you get any of them. But that's the first off. But some common things that we've helped folks with is getting jobs. That's a big one. And learning quite a bit, thought leadership and stuff like that. From a company standpoint, that's where our primary business model is. We've helped them tap into community to generate demand, but more importantly, build trust with the community to generate demand. And that's a big deal. Fill up their pipeline and all of that. So and have community members feel good about that because they trust the brands. That's the key thing. So the network is there. It's tremendous. The warmth that folks give to those that come in is great. And those are just some of the things.
I'm hoping to do more interactions in the community, and that's going to be there for the coming few days and weeks ahead, and probably meet some of them in person also if that's ever possible. If you folks are doing any events, maybe virtual or in person, and I'll try my best to be part of those.
Yeah, we don't have any events in India in person, although the India market is one of our top 3, which is awesome. Digital, we have events weekly, like sometimes daily, so there's a lot going on.
No, definitely I'm going to be part of the virtual ones to begin with, but thank you so much, Jared, for doing this conversation. I think this was lovely, and I'm sure all the people who are going to listen to this, they're going to be inspired by the story of how RevGenius was started, and how you also mentioned that we don't want to be fixated on a platform. Just maybe start with a LinkedIn DM group, let that
That's
grow,
it.
and you never know how when it will reach to 40,000 members once you've started out of a LinkedIn DM. So I think that's very, very inspiring, and we're going to be in touch, and we'll soon reach out to you probably for a more in-depth, detailed conversation about how
Let's go.
uh, community will impact GTM motions in the coming few years. And
Perfect.
also hoping to see more and more trends and you participating in those trends or influencing those trends in some way or other.
Leading them, like creating movements,
Yeah.
because the trends are created to help the people. I saw a gap. People weren't understanding community. I'm not just making this up to make it up. Collaborative growth, I think, will help more people, and more communities help more people, and help more products because they help more people.
Definitely. And I'm glad we did this. And thank you so much, Jared, for once again giving your time. I'm sure we'll be in touch and probably do an in-depth conversation once again sometime in future.
Let's do it. Have an awesome day, Pawan. And thank you everyone for listening. Connect with me on LinkedIn, or come to my website, jaredrobin.com. I have an awesome newsletter. You could subscribe there, or join the community directly, RevGenius.com.
We'll definitely link it in the description of this video and also on the blog, so people can just
brother.
click on that and join from there. But thank you so much once again for giving it the time.